Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here or missed the previous parts, go ahead and check out Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. And while you're at it, consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. Now, let's dive in. The following day, Lima commends the trainees for their performance against the Orwen Kingdom's trainees, stating they seem adequately prepared. He announces plans for upcoming specialized training the following week. Confused, the trainees inquire about this special training. Nervously, Green Boy questions Lima about the nature of this special session. Lima hints that it might not quite fit the term training. Rather, it's gearing up for an actual battle, warning them to brace for witnessing real bloodshed. Lima divulges details about a group of mountain bandits, the Snow Tiger Claw, residing a bit south of the Sieghard territory. These bandits, partially affiliated with the North and South Alliance, previously earned their livelihood by charging passage fees along a mountain road. However, their recent activities have taken a darker turn, involving theft from merchants and even fatalities. The trainees speculate if their mission involves eliminating these bandits. Lima admits it was the initial plan. When asked why he used past tense, a trainee hints that circumstances might have changed and entertains the idea of ambushing the bandits instead. "We can't," Lima replied somberly. He revealed a harrowing incident where the mountain bandits had ambushed a village to the south of the mountains, mercilessly slaughtering all the villagers and setting the place ablaze before fleeing. The trainees were visibly shaken by this revelation. Lima clarified that this was precisely why their mission now involved tracking down and eradicating these bandits. Despite being mountain bandits, they were all aura users with a notorious history, urging the trainees not to underestimate them and to remain vigilant. In a somber tone, Lima informs them of their departure scheduled for the following day. The scene transitions to Runan, meticulously slicing a leaf in half during her training. Despite her dedication, a tinge of disappointment colors her expression as she inwardly acknowledges her desire to refine her posture before their imminent departure, recognizing her struggles to meet her own expectations. Reflecting on Raon's adeptness in the art of stabbing, she admits to herself her own frustration at not comprehending her own impediment. Gazing towards the training edifice, she speculates about Raon's current training session and briefly contemplates seeking his guidance. However, reconsidering, she dismisses the idea, opting not to disrupt his focus, and instead resolves to persevere in her efforts independently. As the sun dipped below the horizon, its golden rays painted the sky in hues of warm oranges and soft pinks, casting an ethereal glow upon the surroundings. Lush greenery unfolded, with vibrant grass swaying gently amidst proud trees. The subsequent panel revealed a serene oasis, a petite pool mirroring the tranquil training building, each ripple preserving the essence of the edifice in its crystal-clear reflection. The harmony between nature's splendor and human craftsmanship was captured in this picturesque moment. Sorry about that. Runan reclined on a boulder, musing silently that her posture had weakened since earlier, yet her movements had notably gained fluidity. She reckoned that today's efforts had sufficed. Rising and casting a glance towards the training facility, she speculated that Raon might still be there, contemplating bidding him farewell before heading home. Then, a recollection struck her, her mother's request to return early this weekend for a promised treat of ice cream. With this memory, she resolved to depart promptly and seek Raon's guidance on the following day, intending to treat him to ice cream then. As she traversed the street solo, a figure trailed behind her, eventually calling out her name. Startled, she pivoted and inquired about the identity of the individual. Her countenance abruptly shifted to one of terror as she laid eyes upon the person. The man possessed hair as white as hers and greeted her, remarking on the passage of time. Syria Slyon, the white-haired man with striking purple eyes, bearing a resemblance to Runan, is introduced as a member of the vassal family Slyon. His smile faltered upon seeing her dismay, questioning why she appeared so distressed at the sight of her own brother. Expressing his discomfort at her reaction,
He reminded her of his prior advice against wearing such an expression. Runan, upon hearing his words, began trembling visibly, a palpable fear taking hold of her. Syria then knelt down, acknowledging the effectiveness of Lima's training, noting with surprise that she had grown significantly stronger than he had anticipated. He rose, expressing his pride in her. Yet his countenance swiftly shifted, assuming a menacing demeanor as he addressed her. "But you wouldn't dare engage in warfare or partake in duels, risking your own life, would you?" Following her brother's words, Runan cried out and distanced herself from him. He then questioned whether she had forgotten all he had taught her in that brief period, reaching into his pocket, suggesting he might need to remind her again. Inquiring about the name of her former squirrel, he speculated if it might be Ruby. Syria, cradling a slumbering squirrel, witnessed as he continued with a smile, expressing certainty that she would now recollect how Ruby had met her end, and what would transpire if she disobeyed him. Despite Runan's cries to halt and wait, her brother proceeded, squeezing the squirrel in his grasp until it met a gruesome fate, blood splattering in all directions. Runan's eyes widened in astonishment. She was transported back to a haunting memory of discovering two lifeless squirrels on the ground and attempting to bury them, only to have her brother intervene and crush them. The recollection of that trauma caused Runan to collapse to her knees, unleashing a scream of terror. Her brother, wearing a smile, drew close, whispering, "Runan, you belong to me," emphasizing that until a certain appointed time, she must refrain from engaging in anything arduous or hazardous. He instructed her to merely stay alive and await his further directions. Abruptly, an assault targeted Syria, resulting in a massive explosion narrowly evaded by him. Shaking with fear, Runan found herself facing Ron, who had appeared before her and her brother. With a serious and intimidating demeanor, Rayon demanded, "Who are you?" Rayon stood his ground, demanding the man to reveal his identity. Syria grinned and retorted that proper introductions should come before seeking someone's name, especially after his sudden intrusion. Rayon pointed out that Syria was the one blocking the path in such a narrow alley, and asked with a threatening tone if he was a thief or a robber. Syria acknowledged how Rayon might interpret the situation, but clarified he wasn't a robber. In fact, he was Runan's older brother. Glancing quickly at Runan, Rayon noticed her trembling in terror, wide-eyed and holding her head. Turning back to Syria, Rayon questioned if he truly was her older brother, because she looked terrified. Syria, lifting his hand, admitted he might have taken the prank too far, expressing joy at seeing Runan after a long time. Rayon questioned if Syria considered squeezing a squirrel to death in front of Runan a prank. Syria giggled and remarked, "So you caught that," explaining that it was not a real squirrel but just a toy. He displayed his empty hand to Rayon as proof that there was nothing there, asserting that there is no way he would have killed a real squirrel. Internally, Rayon noted the intensity of this man's aura, which he used to disintegrate the flesh and blood of the squirrel. Syria then placed a box on the ground, mentioning he had come solely to give his younger sister some snacks, before embarking on a long-term mission. He complimented Runan on her great friend, encouraging them to maintain their strong bond. Apologizing for taking the prank too far, he waved it off, wished Rayon good health, and took his leave. Rayon quietly recognized the man. He's the exceptional swordsman of House Slyon, one of the 12 formidable figures destined to shape the continent's future. Known as the Azure Sword, Syria Slyon was merely a name Rayon had heard of before his reincarnation. This encounter marked their first meeting. He shared that Syria was a deceitful figure, a man who posed as a merciful hero yet carried the same repugnant aura as Derus. Rayon extended his hand to escort Runan, suggesting they depart together. After a stroll they paused near a carriage. Runan expressed her gratitude as she boarded, bidding farewell. Rayon reassured her, urging her to sleep early since they were departing the next day. He lingered, watching the carriage vanish into the distance. Inside the carriage, Runan remained silent until reaching her room, where the ice cream awaited beside her bed. Internally, she noted her brother's return, unchanged from previous encounters. In a fleeting flashback, Runan brushed off a squirrel scratch on her hand, attributing it to her pregnancy and reassuring her older brother Ruby that it was insignificant and caused by the squirrel being overly sensitive. Yet the subsequent scene showed Ruby lying lifeless on the floor. With a chilling demeanor, Syria asserted ownership over her, emphasizing that she must remain unharmed indefinitely, her only role being to breathe. He warned her that disclosing the incident to their parents would result in their demise. He also mentioned he doesn't need the house, threatening to wreck everything if she spills the beans, even going so far as to harm everyone except her. As she grew older, she figured speaking up might lead to someone getting hurt, so she chose to stay silent. Everything seemed fine as long as she kept her mouth shut. She believed she was the sole loner, the only one in pain, until she found solace in Rayon Sieghart. She discovered his kindness, the effort he put in, and the suffering he endured. Seeing how he transformed perceptions through hard work, she hoped to change herself too, but it seems impossible. Back in the present, she sat on her bed crying, whispering, "It's all right, as long as..." She endures. The following day, Lima explained they were in the southernmost area of Sieghart's domain, the Yarten village. He informed the kids they'd be staying there for the night, acknowledging their successful traversal through the dimensional door. Recognizing their likely exhaustion, he advised them to rest well, as it was their last chance to relax before the mission. A local welcomed the Sieghart swordsman and offered to guide them to their rooms. Lima thanked him graciously for his hospitality. Inside his room, Raun was burning firewood and expressed gratitude to Roth, who was confused and asked him what he meant. Raun mentioned he wouldn't have caught on yesterday without the hint, and didn't realize Syria was concealing his presence. In the flashback, after Rayon's training, Roth hinted something trifling might be there, prompting Raun to investigate. Now, Roth mentions he'd go to such lengths for the sake of the ice cream girl. Raun believes Syria won't return soon due to a long mission, but knows Runan will stay that way as long as he is her older brother. Unexpectedly, Roth proposes taking Rayon's body to kill Syria. Rayon reacts with a shocked "what?" in confusion. Roth explains he owes the girl for introducing him to ice cream, and offers to return favor tenfold because the King of Revenge returns twice the favor and 10 times the revenge. "Surely you're joking." "I decline," Raun responded. Despite this, Roth insisted he was serious. Rayon reiterated that even if Roth's words held truth, he wouldn't comply. He emphasized that Syria's actions had deeply scarred Runan, and even if Syria were eliminated, it wouldn't alleviate her suffering. Rayon expresses that Runan, in both his past and present life, is the first child who has shown care towards him. He firmly declares that he'd kill anyone responsible if something were to happen to her. 2 days after departing Sieghart's domain, they reached a village ravaged by the bandits called the Snow Tigers. The children quivered at the sight of charred bodies, voicing questions like, "What's happened here?" and "Why would someone do such a cruel thing?" Baron, beside a burnt corpse, found words to convey the sheer brutality. Rayon surmised internally that they must have been decapitated before being burned, glancing at Martha, who appeared unperturbed by the grisly scene. He presumed she might have encountered numerous corpses before or taken lives herself. Suddenly, Raun scanned the area, abruptly stopping and anxiously wondering about Runan's whereabouts. Runan is seen next to a corpse, and on the next scene the young girl stood frozen, her eyes locked on the horrific scene before a burned corpse, an image that seared into her mind, inducing a heart-wrenching surge of terror, revulsion, and an overwhelming sense of disbelief that can shatter any person's innocence in an instant. Lima addressed the children, explaining that the distressing scene before them was the work of the Snow Tiger bandits. He urged them to etch this memory into their minds, advising them to stay vigilant when encountering such situations. Holding an object he referred to as an inaudible whistle, he clarified that it wouldn't emit an audible sound, but would be detectable by trained individuals. In case of danger, they were to use it, signaling the supervising instructors for immediate action. He cautioned them about the bandits' ruthless swords, suggesting that before resorting to the whistle, they should attempt self-defense, even considering not to hesitate beheading them if they get the chance. With resounding agreement from the trainees, Runan, however, stood silently. She couldn't kill even an insect, let alone a human. Lima then organized them into groups led by the top trainees, assigning Martha to Group A and Burren to Group B, each composed of 4 members. Gripping her sword, Runan recalled her brother's words, reminding her that she belongs to him and to avoid perilous situations. She just needs to keep breathing until the day he needs her. He also mentioned that he'd kill everything that injures her. Suddenly, Runan snapped back to reality as Raon called her name, urging her to join him. Runan appeared downcast and hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. They both positioned themselves in front of a stunning colossal mountain. Raon quietly pondered if the peak they glimpsed belonged to Rutan Mountain. The elevated vantage point would offer a clear view below, plus it'd be easier to escape or take cover if things turned dicey. It seemed like the perfect spot for bandits to lurk, but Raon suspected they wouldn't choose the obvious location, knowing they were being pursued. Since it's the perfect place, they won't be in the mountain. He reasoned they must have accounted for that and likely settled on the hill yonder. It appeared exposed from outside but might hide another area within. He reasoned that the bandits wouldn't opt for the obvious hiding spot, knowing they were being pursued. They must have anticipated that their pursuers would expect them to choose the mountain, so the visible hill seemed like their sole option from the outside. But there might be an interior area hidden from view. With that conclusion, Raon called to Runan saying, "Let's go." He suggested they investigate that hill while leaving the forest to the other teams. Runan simply responded with an "okay." As Runan moved ahead, Raon glanced at her with a somber expression. Wrath then appeared, and remarked on Raon's evident concern for her, questioning why he wouldn't speak up. Raon admitted he wasn't sure what to tell her. Moreover, it was a family matter. He added that since he didn't even understand his emotions toward his mother Sylvia, he felt incapable of offering any advice on family matters. However, he's well aware of Syria's actions towards Runan. He silently acknowledges that he should find an opportunity to address the issue, although it might prove challenging to do so. While heading toward their destination, Raon notes internally that, as per his expectations, there exists a concealed forest within the hill, unseen from the outside. It's notably deep and appears to mask human tracks, making them difficult to locate. Yet such concealment tactics may work against inexperienced individuals, but they won't hinder Raon. He reflects that becoming the best assassin doesn't solely involve eliminating targets. It encompasses observation, analysis, and information gathering. While these strategies might fool an average pursuer, they're futile against Raon, because he was the best assassin in his previous life. Proceeding, Raon informs Runan that he suspects the Snow Tiger's hideout is nearby. He instructs her to follow silently, even regulating her breath. She complies, and they cautiously explore, seeking potential clues. Suddenly Raon spots traps on the ground, which he expected to be the only notable defenses aside from the entrance. Evidently the bandits assumed no one would venture this far, given the numerous traces left behind. Hiding behind a tree and observing the bandits, he remarks that they've underestimated their potential intruders. Among them, he notices a tied-up child, pondering if the boy is a hostage. Despite the robust bodies of the guards, Raon senses no aura from them, recognizing them as low-ranking warriors. Raon assessed the robust man near the hostage, presuming his proficiency with the sword, and speculated that the bulk of the bandits must be gathered inside, as they wouldn't likely leave their only hostage at a basic outpost. He gauged the potential numbers of bandits to be possibly dozens, contemplating whether to signal a retreat and regroup with the main force before attacking. However, seeing the dire condition of the hostage, at risk of freezing to death, he doubted the boy's survival until reinforcements arrived. Since they hadn't been detected yet, the optimal move was to rescue the hostage discreetly and deal with the bandits silently. As Raun prepared to act, he noticed Runan looking frightened and tense. He swiftly called her attention, reassuring her that they could save the boy together, soliciting her assistance. He instructed her to block the sound upon his signal, assuring her he'd handle the rest. "Can you do that?" he asked, to which she hesitantly replied she would try. One of the guards, feeling drowsy, mentioned his sleepiness to the man beside him, questioning how much longer they had to remain stationed there. Abruptly halting mid-sentence, their attention shifted as they spotted Runan approaching. Inquiring about her identity, they received no response. Instead, Runan unleashed her aura to block the sound waves. Astonished, one of the men suddenly realized their voices weren't carrying. Did she just block the sound with her aura? They wondered. The other man, surprised by the presence of an aura user in such a place, voiced his astonishment. Meanwhile, Raun seized the opportunity, and while sneaking by, decided to confront these two individuals first, before dealing with the burly man in the background. Swiftly and skillfully, he dispatched the pair. Suddenly, one of the men's heads flew past Runan, triggering a traumatic memory of her pet squirrel's death from her childhood. Witnessing this, her eyes widened, and the trauma overwhelmed her, causing her to collapse, clutching her head and screaming. Although Raun found no pleasure in this situation, he noted that the mana barrier was broken, wondering if her trauma resurfaced due to these events. Terrified with heavy breathing, Runan's distress escalated, leading Raun to realize that the bandits might discover them if this continued. As Runan faced imminent danger from the bandit's sword, Raun, with a look of fear on his face, took swift action. He managed to overpower the bandits, saving Runan just in the nick of time. Pointing his sword at the bandit's neck, Raun warned him to stay quiet or face immediate consequences. Raun laid out the rules: answer questions or lose a bone each time he refused. Glancing back, Raun noticed Runan still trembling, but acknowledged her quick thinking in putting up a mana barrier, which saved them. Raun began the interrogation, asking if the man was part of the Snow Tiger Claw, to which he reluctantly admitted. Further questioning revealed there were 39 of them in the forest, and one more hostage. Raun, realizing the significance, pressed on about the hostages, and the man confirmed one more was inside. A kid who had been a previous hostage disclosed that the captive was his younger sister, pleading with Raun to save her. Runan reassured the worried kid that they would save his sister, encouraging him not to worry. However, Raun, ever pragmatic, advised Runan against making promises. Undeterred, Runan affirmed, "But we're going to." Raun, recognizing the determination, reminded her that while they could handle the bandits, securing support was crucial for a safe hostage rescue. He figured out there were 36 bandits, plus the leader of the Snow Tiger Claw, making it potentially risky. Runan then asked if she should blow the whistle, and Raon agreed, thinking it was a good idea. So Runan blew on the whistle with all her might. Raun, standing right next to her, couldn't hear any noise from the whistle, realizing Lima must have had a reason for giving them that particular whistle. Suddenly, in an angry tone, someone in the bandit crowd mentioned a silent whistle being used, urging everyone to get up because someone was onto them. Runan and Raun were shocked. Raun, in particular, was confused and taken aback that someone had sharp enough senses to detect the whistle, which even he couldn't hear. Hiding behind a tree, Runan and the kid, Raun, positioned himself with a sword at the bandit's neck as the rest of the bandits faced them. The leader, an elderly man with white hair and an X-scar on his cheek, casually remarked about a young kid like him causing scene by coming all the way here. With a nonchalant expression, he inquired about who he had called with the whistle. Raun, keeping the sword at the man's neck, brushed off the question, stating it's none of his business and proposing a hostage trade. "Trade hostages?" the man asks. Raun responds, telling him that if he hands over the child, he'll release the man too. Suddenly the old man bursts into laughter, stating he doesn't care whether the hostage Rayon holds lives or dies. Continuing, the old man emphasizes that the hostage holds no value to him, unlike the child. Pointing his sword at the child's neck, he warns Rayon that if he doesn't want to see the child's head roll, he should put down his sword immediately. The little girl looks sad and starts crying upon hearing the man's words. With a piercing stare, Ron acknowledges, saying, "I see." He instructs Runan to turn around and wait for his signal. After Runan complies, Ron swiftly slashes the throat of the man he held hostage, blood splattering everywhere. The bandits witnessing the scene scorn Rayon. In a sudden motion, Ron throws his sword towards a bandit, catching him off guard as the sword pierces his chest. In a loud tone, Ron instructed Runan to create a frost fog using aura, and she swiftly followed his command. The frost fog enveloped the surroundings, leaving the bandits unable to see anything. Exploiting the confusion, Rayon dashed past them, rescuing the unconscious little girl who had been the hostage. The bandits, realizing Rayon had escaped with the child, cursed and vowed to find and kill him. Hiding somewhere safe, Rayon observed the unconscious kids and mentioned to Runan that they might have passed out due to the cold. Unable to run away with them in that state and uncertain about the bandits' plans for the village, Rayon decided they needed to eliminate the threat. Despite sustaining an injury to his hand, Rayon insisted that Runan stay and protect the kids while he dealt with the bandits. With a concerned look, Runan informed Raon about his bleeding arm. Raon reassured her, insisting he's okay and expressing his intent to swiftly deal with the bandits before returning. As Raon prepared to depart, Runan grasped his sleeve, urging him not to go due to the danger of fighting while injured. She pointed out that the instructors would arrive soon, suggesting they wait for assistance. Raon met Runan's gaze, kneeling to her eye level, and empathetically acknowledged the frightening nature of the battlefield, understanding the shared experience between trainees like them and seasoned swordsmen. He inquired if she knew what was even more frightening, promptly responding, being paralyzed by fear and unable to take action. He states that the bandits have committed egregious and unforgivable acts. He's confident that among the deceased, there are individuals who attempted to shield their village and others, who fought valiantly until the very end to safeguard their loved ones. Emphasizing their allegiance as Sieghart swordsmen, he asserts that they cannot overlook these deaths. Raon continued, emphasizing the importance of completing their mission to honor the sacrifices made and safeguard those who survived. Although uncertain about her brother's actions, he conveyed that the more frightened she becomes, the greater the influence of that man's shadow. He warned her that succumbing to fear would only deepen its hold, advising her to resist letting fear dictate her actions. With a final expression of words, he called her name, Runan Slyon, affirming that she alone has the power to protect herself and those she cherishes. From his pocket, he took something and handed it to her, stating that the choices they make from this point forward are hers to decide. As he rose and headed towards the bandits' lair, he reassured her that she no longer needed to linger in the shadows. Runan remained silent, reflecting on his words and recalling his brother. Internally, she expressed a desire for change, wanting to break free from the constraints of the past. Determined to protect what mattered to her, she resolved to step out of the dark shadows and into the bright light. The scene revealed that Rayon had given her a figurine of a squirrel, reminding her of her old pet squirrel Ruby, a gesture that meant a lot to her. Rayon re-entered the bandits' lair, displaying ruthless efficiency by dispatching 3 of them with a single slash each. Amidst the chaos, the bandits, infuriated, cursed, urging each other to end the young threat. Despite their attempts, anyone who approached Ron met a swift demise. As Ron skillfully eliminated foes, the old man, baffled by their inability to stop a mere child, shouted in frustration. In a dramatic turn, someone leapt behind Ron, ready to strike. Alert and quick, Ron turned just in time to dodge the impending attack. The old man, now facing Rayon, declared, "You're dead, you little brat," and lunged again. A cloud of dust enveloped the scene as the old man attacked, but to his astonishment, Rayon had vanished from his original position. Bewildered, he muttered, What? Where did he just vanish to? Unbeknownst to the old man, Rayon had positioned himself behind, questioning the man's cowardly waiting tactics. Without hesitation, Rayon effortlessly decapitated him, the old man's head soaring as blood scattered. The bandits, witnessing Rayon's prowess, nervously dubbed him a monster, grappling with the mystery of how such strength could exist in someone so young, questioning if Rayon was truly just a trainee. Rayon instructed them to surrender after their leader's demise, but his attention quickly shifted as he skillfully intercepted an incoming attack. Suddenly a voice chimed in expressing disbelief, emanating from a brown-haired man. Curious, the brown boy questioned the logic of dying to a mere child, warning that it would only bring shame on themselves if they enter the North and South Alliance like this. Upon scrutinizing Rayon, the brown boy acknowledged Rayon's apparent affluence, suggesting he hailed from a well-off family, a more desirable hostage than their previous captive. Without hesitation, the man lunged at Rayon, remarking that he had feared their offerings might fall short, expressing gratitude to the heavens for not abandoning him, Vukan. With a formidable strike, Vukan slashed at Rayon, declaring his intention to take Rayon, his friend, and the other children as hostages. Despite Rayon successfully blocking the attack, he recognized the strength of the Snow Tiger Claw Chief. Initially considering him a novice with the sword, Rayon revised his assessment, identifying him as a proficient sword user. Rayon grappled with the chief, employing both hands to parry the chief's slashes. Meanwhile, a voice from the sidelines exclaimed the discovery of Runan and the hostages. Observing Runan in a tense struggle with an opponent, Rayon, torn between the two conflicts, inwardly worried at the unpreparedness of Runan for battle, feeling the need to rush to her aid. Distracted, Rayon barely blocked a slash from the chief, who, seizing the opportunity, questioned Rayon's gaze diversion, expressing disbelief at his concern for his friend and the hostages. The chief, adopting a menacing tone, suggested reveling in the battle, and urged Rayon to forsake thoughts of his friend for the moment. Outside the fray, a bandit, observing Runan, cursed at her utilization of peculiar skills, while noting her apparent lack of killing anyone before. Approaching Runan, he demanded the release of the hostages, instead of engaging in fouling around. Surveying the children behind her, Runan resolved to protect them at all costs. Gripping her blade tightly, she acknowledged the necessity of killing the enemy in front of her, thankful that the bandit posed no significant challenge. She wants to kill the man, motivating herself and recalling not to forget Rayon's words. As the man rushed at her, a vision of her brother holding her sword flashed before her. Trauma resurfaced, and she felt the need to push it away, haunted by the fear from that day. Wondering if she could protect something like Rayon does, she realized her inability to wield a sword properly, scared as she had never protected anything before. Suddenly, someone called her name, and as she snapped back to reality, she realized it was Ron. His gentle tone reassured her, saying it's okay and that she can do it. His words felt like a comforting message to her younger self, urging her not to worry and come along. Runan's eyes welled up. Now prepared for the fight, she silently acknowledged that she had to thank Raon for instilling courage in her. Her sword now surrounded by her cold aura, she faced the bandit about to strike, ready to retaliate. With a swift motion she slashed the man, inwardly expressing gratitude to Raon for helping her move forward and for believing in her. The chief, observing the situation, criticized everyone for losing to these kids, branding them as useless. However, Raon caught his attention, insisting they were not just little kids. Charging his fire aura, he declared to the chief that Runan is a child who overcame her dark past on her own and possessed a kinder and stronger heart than anyone he knew. Flames growing, Raon portrayed her as a swordsman who had overcome trials. Employing his powers, he executed the 1,000 Flames technique. First flames, flower fall, swiftly slashing and defeating the chief. Moments later, Raon checked a chest for remaining traps before the instructors arrived. There he discovered a two-tone flower, a rare miracle herb. Pondering if the bandits massacred an entire village for this, he was interrupted by a voice asking if it was already over. Raon and Runan turned to see a red-haired man, noticing Rayon holding the same two-toned flower that Vukan had. With a smile, the man inquires if they killed them all. The man is revealed to us as the North and South Alliance's eternal bandit chief. Rayon, unfazed, asks what if they did. The man maintained his smile, remarking on Rayon's boldness. He acknowledged Rayon's ability to judge situations, attributing his confidence to skill. When Rayon questions his affiliation with the North and South Alliance, the man confirms it, introducing himself as Richter. Upon hearing the name, Raon inwardly acknowledges Richter with a hint of nervousness. Inwardly, Raon recalled hearing Richter's name before. A genius swordsman who joined the North and South Alliance with only a sword, rising to chief of a large mountain bandit group in a decade. Raon acknowledged that the Snow Tiger Claw bandits couldn't compare. Richter was a true martial artist with genuine skills. Richter discerned that these kids hailed from a renowned family, a direct lineage of the Zegarts. Observing the absence of engravings on Raon's and Runan's swords, he concluded that they must be trainees. What should I do?" he uttered, then with a nonchalant tone and expression he casually proposes, "Should I kill you?" Richter unleashes his formidable aura, signaling his hostile intentions. Raon, having once lived the life of an assassin, remains unfazed, drawing his sword in response. Richter, impressed by Rayon's composure, questions how he can withstand such a potent aura. Now he understands that Raon is not just a normal kid. In his mind, Rayon was contemplating all the things he can do to kill this guy. He knows he can kill this man if he approaches from behind, but he can't defeat him as he is right now in a head-on fight. But for some reason, Rayon doesn't want to back down, so he tells him to take his sword and come at him with all his might. Richter is shocked to hear this, because he knows that Rayon already understands the situation, knows that he is going to be defeated. But Rayon, with a confident voice, says that it's common sense for the weak to die to the strong. This leaves Richter dumbfounded, because he feels that it's something a kid should not say. After hearing this, he actually loses his interest to fight with Raon, because now he knows what kind of person Rayon is, and he thinks that it will be a shame to kill someone like him. But Rayon doesn't back down even now. He says, "A martial artist doesn't choose where he dies." All this stuff coming out of Rayon's mouth is making Richter more confused and flustered. He sarcastically asks Rayon if he's sure he is a kid. Does he have a collection of famous quotes or something? He was standing right in front of him and says that there is another reason why he doesn't want to kill him right now. He says, "The vicious wind has been watching us for a while." Rayon doesn't understand what he is saying, but Richter jumps and gets away from Rayon, and tells him that it would have been fun if he were a part of the North and South Alliance. He stands on a snowy peak and asks Raon about his name. He looks curious to know more about Raon. Raon tells him that he is Rayon Zegart. After hearing Raon's name, he tells him that he hopes that one day he will hear about him from across Mount Terukan and Rabel River, and then he vanishes away from here. After this, Raon checks on Runan and tells her that they should leave from here too. Runan is thinking about something now about her fight. She asks him if she was good. Raon is confused and dumbfounded by this question, but he simply smiles and tells her that she was the best. This makes Runan happy, and this was the end of Raon's short, but also long first mission. After a while, Raon returned and met the other trainees. He had returned with the head of the Snow Tiger Claw bandits chief. Because of this, Martha and Buren were upset that they lost to him once again. Other students were a little bit upset too, so Lima comforted the other students for not performing as well. He also gave them some advice, which actually turned into a storytelling of how great his own first mission went for him. So we can say that the headmaster was pleased with how he did on his own first mission. Even Roth started to brag about his first battle, and he started to tell Rayon about his first battle in which he froze an entire castle. Listening to the two very talkative people reminiscing almost made Rayon feel his ears were bleeding. The rescued children had lost their parents, so the Slyon family decided to take them in. Slyon family is the family of Runen, and even the children liked the decision, since they started to like Runen after a few days. Upon returning from the missions, Runen and Ron were summoned by the Patriarch, where they were awarded with a bronze medal for their accomplishments. At first, Ron was surprised to be praised by the Patriarch, and we get to know the Patriarch gave Rayon the two-tone flower by calling it Rayon's own loot, despite the flower being a very rare miracle medicine. The Patriarch decided to give it to Rayon. Rayon is visibly confused about this, but he still takes it since getting the two-tone flower is quite a big deal. At night, when Rayon came back to his home, his eyes were stunned to see someone in front of him. He was confused and flustered to see Dorian here. He asked Dorian why he was here, to which Dorian replied that Madame Sylvia had asked him to stop by. He further tells that Madame Sylvia asked him about what happened once the mission was completed. Ron was stunned to hear this. Beads of sweat fell from his face as he was in terrible shock. With a pinch of fear in his voice, he asked Dorian if he had told her everything. Dorian's eyes teared up when he informed Raon that he told Madame Sylvia about the touching story. Raon was dumbfounded by this and inwardly wondered, what has this idiot done? Suddenly he heard Sylvia's voice, who was accompanied by Maid Helen. Both of their faces looked like they couldn't process what they had just heard. Raon thought that Sylvia would be really mad if she knew that he stepped up to kill the bandits. He tried to explain the situation, but suddenly Sylvia ran up to him and hugged him. She smiled and told Ron that he did a great job. Ron was confused by this series of events. Sylvia asked her why she thought she would be mad. Ron replied that Sylvia always tells him to be careful. Rayon was about to say some more things, but Sylvia cut him off and said that the reason the first Patriarch wielded his sword was to protect the weak. She told him that he always has reached out his hand to those in need since then. The Sieghart continued to carry out his will to protect the weak. She tells Rayon that her dream was to become a swordsman like the first Patriarch. So how could she scold Rayon for saving the hostages? She put both of her hands on Rayon's shoulders and told him that she was proud of him. Maid Helen was also proud to hear the story, and she told the other maids that tomorrow she would go to the main residence and she would brag about Raon's successful first mission. Sylvia was very emotional, but on the other hand, Raon was not able to understand her. He felt that emotions were too complicated for him. He turned his face behind to look at what that bastard Dorian had done, but he was long gone from here. Rayon felt that the situation was not that bad either. On the other hand, we see Runen cherishing the wooden squirrel which was given to her as a present by Rayon. She was lying on her bed and thinking about the moments spent with Rayon. She remembers on their first mission, where Rayon motivated her to move forward and forget about her dark past. In her mind, she thinks that next time when she will meet him, she will thank him for all that he did for her. Now we find ourselves in the forest, where Lima was also thinking about Ran. We get to know what Rictor was telling Ran about the vicious wind. Actually, Lima was hiding behind the tree and watching the interaction between Rictor and Ran. With a grin, Lima says that it's been so long since he have seen in someone what he saw in the Patriarch. To him, it seems like the seed for a new king has begun to sprout. Now we behold the grand presidential building of the Robert family. Inside, a man sat at his office table engrossed in writing. By the way, do you recall this white-haired gentleman? If not, allow me to remind you. He is Sir Daruth Robert, the primary antagonist of our tale, the one who ended Rayon's life back in the first chapter. He was writing something in his book, and noticed blood on the page. When he checked, he noticed the wound was still not closed. He remembers the day when he killed Rayon, but before dying, Rayon charged up towards him and attacked him. He remembered that it had been 17 years already since the day Rayon had given him this wound. He continued to try out different high-quality miracle medicines since that day, but it didn't work. He also hired skilled physicians and renowned priests. However, no one has been able to erase this wound from his hand. He sees the wound on his hand, which neither heals nor gets worse. He feels that the wound looks exactly similar, just like it did the day he got it. He feels the wound is communicating to him, and it wants him to remember that day. He sarcastically says, "So some dead spirit is asking me to remember him," and feels that Rayon is standing in front of him, and he laughs at him. He says that the past doesn't matter, because he is not a person who will look back on his own past. Now we get to know that there is only little time left until Robert's lifelong wish will come true. I feel he is planning something cruel, but we don't know what that is. Now we see Rayon, who has achieved many rewards on his status window. We can see the bitter cold curse has been weakened. He got the 3-star Thousand Flames technique, and he has also achieved 3-star bitter cold aura. He got 3-star legendary senses, 3-star flame attribute resistance, and now he has achieved entry to sword expert. His aura manipulation speed has also increased. All of his stats have greatly increased. His sword proficiency has increased. His footwork technique proficiency has also increased. He is happy to see all these appraisals in his skills. He finally reached the expert realm, and he is satisfied with his performance. Although it is still entry level. But we all know that Raon has worked really hard to reach this point. Roth tries to insult Rayon by saying that it is ridiculous because even a swordsmaster is just near an insect in front of him. So why is Rayon being proud of himself for becoming an expert level? Rayon tells him that it is rare for a 15-year-old to become an expert level. Even if someone looks all over the continent, they won't be able to find anyone of Rayon's age who has already achieved expert level. Roth annoyingly tells him that only idiots consider age on the battlefield. Age doesn't matter. Weak is still weak. But surprisingly, Rayon doesn't argue back. He accepts what Roth is saying. He says that even he knows that no one goes easy on the opponent, just because the opponent is young when they are on the battlefield. Roth is still annoyed and further tells Rayon that he is very weak compared to him. Even if Rayon tries, he can't even touch his fingernail. But Rayon smiles and tells him that he also agrees with him. Then Roth questions, "If you know that you are still so weak, then why are you able to smile like this?" To this, Raon replies, "Because I'm happy. In my past life I was nowhere near this level." He continues, "Even you admitted that I have grown somewhat." Hearing this, Roth becomes speechless, and he doesn't know what he should reply to Raon. He starts to throw a tantrum like a little child and says, "Why would I praise a human? I will never do that." Raon roasts him and says, "Don't get so mad over such small things." Raon says that he heard Roth's voice shake a little, so it confirms to him that he has become stronger. They both have been together long enough to know what Roth is thinking, but Roth doesn't accept this. He tells Raon, "A human like you who can see through my behavior should deserve more than death." Now he tries to freeze Raon with his power, but that doesn't affect Raon at all. He smiles and tells him that this kind of rage is nothing for him now. He claims that if Roth doesn't get his power again, then he's going to be eaten by him instead. Now we see Roth's typical useless trash talk, and he starts to reminisce again by saying, listening to Rayon's nonsense reminds him of the old days. He starts to tell his story that back in his days in the demon realm, there were demons who came to challenge him. But before he can continue his story, Rayon starts to walk away from here. These two have an interesting relationship. Let's see how their relation will grow in the future. The next day in the training hall, Lima tells everyone that the training for today is over, and they can go now. But Björn stops Lima and reminds him that he himself has come 20 minutes late. So shouldn't all the students go 20 minutes past the usual time? But the lazy Lima tries to sneak his way out, saying that they can make up for it tomorrow, and that was enough for today. Inwardly, Björn calls him an irresponsible elf. Now Rayon gathers all the students around him and tells them to finish up the training. The one in charge for today should start the cleanup, he says. We see Dorian go to a locker to pick up cleaning stuff, but as soon as he closes the locker, he notices that Martha was giving him cold stares. He gets really afraid and screams, trying to run away from her, but she catches him. Annoyed, she tells him to quickly finish cleaning up everything together, because she's already busy enough with her training. She's cold and shouts at other students, asking them, what are they all loitering around for? Since she have to clean, she tells them to quickly get out from here. This makes Rayon realize that she is only calm towards him, and even the headmaster was standing behind him, confirming that she is unchanged. She only switches up around Ran. Ran turns behind and is confused to see Headmaster Lima here, because he had run away from here just now, and the headmaster goes in front and tells everyone that he's come back for something he forgot. The students standing there are a little bit afraid and scared to know what he is about to say. They all question what did he forget. The headmaster gathers all around here and announces them to listen carefully. He claims that there is something else he has to announce, and it is really very important. Students are curious and confused to know what it is this time, and the headmaster tells them that there is a second mission for all of them. Hearing this, all the students get confused and stand still in one place. They don't know how should they react to this. The headmaster laughs and says how could he forget to tell them this important thing. All the students are dumbfounded that how could Headmaster Lima could be so irresponsible that he forgot such an important thing. We get to know that it's already been half a year since the first mission has been completed. Raun thinks it took longer than expected for the second mission to come. He feels that there are fewer duties for the Siegharts to handle compared to his past life. Headmaster now further explains them about the second mission. Apparently there has been orc invasions in the southern part of the Zart territory, and their mission is to eliminate the orcs who are threatening the villagers, and they should protect the people of the village. In simple words, we can say that their mission is the protection of the village and monster raid. Everyone gets excited to hear this news, because it is an actual orc raid. They always waited for such a kind of mission to arrive. Now they all can show their sword skills, and finally test out their swordsmanship skills. Lima calls them newbies, and grabs the attention by saying that why are they so excited about this mission. They all get confused by the headmaster's words, but now the headmaster further explains that the instructors will not be accompanying them on this mission. They are the only ones going to the village, and they need to work together to accomplish the mission. Now, this was surprising for all of them. But suddenly Buren raises his hand and asks Lima that what if they come across a dangerous situation that they cannot handle? What should they do in that situation? To this, Lima replies, it's up to you to handle. If it's a mission you cannot accomplish, then you should know when to give up. That's why the leader's ability to accurately judge a situation is important. He claims that a leader needs to be able to judge what the best response to the given situation should be. Now Dorian raises his hand and asks Lima, isn't it bad if we run away from a mission? Lima tells him that normally it is considered bad, but it depends on the situation too. If you all come across one of the 5 demons and manage to escape, then in that situation that would be praiseworthy. Hearing this answer from Lima makes Dorian happy, because now he knows that running away won't get him into trouble. And seeing his reaction, Buren is confused and speechless. Now, Lima drops the actual bomb by saying that they all have to leave the day after tomorrow. They all are stunned and speechless to hear this, because they have to leave in 2 days, and this is not an easy mission. The kids were surprised, wondering why they had so little time allocated to them. It felt like they were being rushed too much. One person mentioned that the approaching nightfall made them feel even more rushed, squeezing their time down to just 1 day. Lima jumped in, explaining the complex preparations needed for an upcoming monster attack, differentiating it from regular guard duties or dungeon explorations. With a friendly smile, he stressed the potential consequences for the village if they didn't prepare well in advance, advising them to be careful. On the other hand, Buren suggested they could have prepared better if they had been warned earlier. Suddenly, Raun spoke up, ending the growing argument with a firm statement. All eyes turned to him as he reinforced Lima's consistent advice about the unpredictable nature of their missions, urging them to focus on readiness rather than panic. He pointed out that the more they worried about their situation, the less time they would have to prepare. Encouraged by Rayon's words, one student admitted he was right, while another agreed that waiting for the perfect moment might not guarantee success. So they decided to take action together. Lima then explained how tough orcs were, highlighting their aggression and superior strength, emphasizing the difference between past skirmishes and the upcoming battle, due to the large size and numbers of the orc enemies. Realizing a direct fight wasn't practical, he suggested a strategy of evasion rather than defense. Advising them to travel light, he set the meeting time for dawn in 2 days, wrapping up the briefing by assuring them they had all the necessary information for now. Later that day, Ran was back at his house and was about to enter his room, but he suddenly noticed a bag next to his door. He felt that the backpack had a lightweight spell on it. He knew that this was sent by Lima, and with the spell on it, Lima was making it obvious that he wouldn't help them with this mission. Raon figured that Lima was trying to say that it's all up to them. But that was okay by Raon. Suddenly Roth called him an arrogant bastard. Asking if he thought that everything would go as he imagined, he continued by saying that anything unexpected could happen at any point. Raon agreed, mentioning how it's just like how Roth had given him all of his stat points. Those words made Roth want to shut Raon's mouth for good, but Raon assured him that wouldn't happen. Suddenly both of their attention turned to the door. As Raon opened it, he wondered who could be visiting him at this hour. He was shocked to see his mum standing there looking mad. With a serious tone, she told him that he should at least let her know if he gets a mission. Nervously, Ran asked her how she knew, wondering if Dorian had told her again. However, she replied that Lima was the one who told her. Inwardly, Ran cursed, thinking, "That darn elf!" He then apologized to her. She stood in silence and looked at him, then held his hand. She told him that being a head student meant a lot more than just being the representative. He needed to lead the other trainees into a better path. So, he shouldn't carry out missions alone. He needed to put his fellow trainees in the right positions to minimize damage and lead everyone to success in the mission. His friends' lives depended on the choices he made. Inwardly, Raon anticipated a lecture, but instead she offered advice. Placing her hand on his chest, she explained that monster raids might appear simple, but they're actually quite challenging. She urged him to ensure the safety of the villagers by eliminating every single threat. Emphasizing that during missions he transitions from a trainee to a Sieghart swordsman, she hoped he would embody the old ideals of their family. Raon admitted he had expected her to yell at him, prompting her to express that she is mad, worried, and frustrated too. However, she quickly hugged him, acknowledging it wasn't the time for scolding. She warned him to brace himself for a proper scolding once he get back, but expressed relief that he had gotten brighter after beginning his training. But she could never stop worrying about him. Those words resonated deeply with Raon, reminding him of a past where no one had shown concern for his well-being. Being embraced by someone who genuinely cared felt comforting. The following day, the students stood respectfully as Lima concluded his speech. Stressing the unpredictability of their journey, he urged them to exercise utmost caution and advised retreat if needed. Responding with a unified, "Yes, sir," the students acknowledged his directive. With a nod, Lima bid them to depart, noting that while the journey typically took a month, the road they had built would shorten it to 2 weeks. He wished them luck, and then the students thanked him. Ran then took charge and instructed everyone to line up in formation with 4 rows, moving according to the buddy system they established earlier that morning. Lima watched them with pride and silently acknowledged that he was confident they would succeed because Ran excelled not only in combat and aura, but also in his strategic thinking. Lima was certain Ran would breeze through this mission and return triumphantly, especially considering Ran was only 15. Lima always had high expectations of him whenever he saw him. Meanwhile, Ran reminded everyone to stay mindful of their positions in case of battle, assigning Dorian and Cetane to double-check all the gear and the health of the team members. Suddenly, an instructor approached Lima and inquired if they should follow the students now, noting that at this distance they wouldn't notice if they departed. However, Lima replied, Not yet, explaining that one of them had particularly sharp senses, referring to Rayon. Then Limer let out a yawn and mentioned he was going to catch a quick nap before departing. The other instructors questioned if it was wise to delay, suggesting they leave immediately. But Limer assured them they should worry about the orcs instead of the students. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit place adorned with skulls, a cloaked figure inquires if the gathered individuals are confident in the information they've provided. One hooded figure kneeling before him confirms, stating they've received certified information that it's that village. The leader nods, asserting that they should proceed, authorizing the elimination of anyone who gets in their way. And with that, Season 1 of this manhwa concludes with 37 chapters. The message on the screen is from the creators.
What did you think of this season? If you want Season 2, let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your thoughts and feedback. If you're excited for the next season, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll see you all in the next chapter, and thanks again for watching.